Okay, welcome everyone to the Hidden Opportunities of Distressed Debt. On behalf of the Riverside Experience, we thank you for taking the time to join us for this great webinar. We have a great discussion on tap featuring some of the industry's top experts in the field. This event is brought to you by the Riverside Experience and the Riverside family of companies. Riverside's motto is that they are more than just a title company. They are your partner in helping you get your deals done. When everyone else says no, Riverside says yes. While others are pulling back, Riverside is fully up and running, getting things done for their clients. Whether it's their top-rated title services, 1031 exchanges, or cost segregation, Riverside is there for you. Did you know Riverside has a soft deposit fund that assists their clients put offers on new deals without tying up their money? Our lead sponsor today is Asset Protection Program, a brand new initiative to help property owners cover their short-term obligations by providing liquidity during this difficult period of uncertainty. Please direct your attention to the screen for a short video.
Sleepless nights, exhausting weekends. You've sacrificed many things to build your asset, and you have what to show for it. When storm clouds suddenly appear, your dreams are far too precious to have them snatched away from you in a flash. But fighters know there is always a plan B. A way even in the toughest conditions. Asset Protection Program is your partner in providing you the liquidity and flexibility to help protect your dreams from life's unexpected turns. Never give up the fight. A better future lies ahead.
Okay, now we'll turn over the program to our panelists, led by Joshua Dobin. Josh, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. We have a great panel today. We have some real industry experts, and it's a privilege to hear from them on this topic. I'll briefly introduce them, and then we'll get right into it. We have Daniel Lebensohn, who is the co-founder of BH3. He has an expertise in complex distressed and workout scenarios. He oversees the deal sourcing, legal, and structuring components of BH3's acquisitions. Prior to co-founding BH3, Dan served as in-house counsel to a Manhattan owner, operator, and developer for several years, and has more than 20 years of investment and operational experience, including acquisitions and management of multifamily and commercial projects in New York City through his first company, Wilder Realty. Dan owns a JD, and he practiced law in New York City for more than 12 years, where he was actively acquiring and turning around assets in the tri-state region. He also serves as co-portfolio manager of BH3 Debt Opportunity Fund 1 LP, and in that capacity, he is jointly responsible for all major decisions, including investment decisions, legal strategy, and asset dispositions. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Hi.
We have Faisal Ashraf, who is the founding and managing partner of Lotus Capital Partners, LLC. It's a capital advisory firm focused on serving owners and developers in arranging debt, preferred equity, and mezzanine financing for commercial real estate. Lotus also provides borrowers with restructuring advisory and workout solutions with their existing lenders. Since its inception in late 2016, Faisal has led Lotus into becoming one of the fastest growing capital advisory firms in the United States. From 2013 to 2016, he served as managing director and the head of capital markets and large loan lending at CCRE, which at the time was the largest non-bank CMBS lender in the United States. During his tenure at CCRE, he successfully originated and distributed over $4 billion in mortgage and mezzanine capital. And prior to that, he served as a senior member on the U.S. real estate financing for Credit Suisse, where he structured and closed over $35 billion in debt and equity-related products. His various positions at Credit Suisse included deputy head of the real estate finance in Europe, where his group financed over $5 billion in mortgage and mezz capital across 8 countries. He started his career at Moody's Investor Services, where he underwrote $15 billion in U.S. commercial real estate loans. Welcome, Faisal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Josh.
We have Christopher Herron, who is the Managing Director of Ironhound. Christopher joined Ironhound in 2009 and has over 19 years of experience in the commercial real estate industry. At Ironhound, he's responsible for the loan restructuring platform along with the debt and equity advisory business. In addition, he sources new origination and acquisition opportunities for Ironhound. Before coming on board at Ironhound, he was a director in Wachovia's real estate group, where he worked in the securitization, CMBS, large loan, and structured finance groups. His responsibilities included loan origination, structuring, execution, and disposition of these loans in the secondary market. And in his 8 years at Wachovia, he originated and sold over $7 billion in loans for CMBS and large loan groups, and over $500 million for the structured finance balance sheet. My name is Josh Dobin. I'm a partner in the Miami office of Milland, Rustin, and Budwick. I assist clients in all troubled real estate situations and routinely represent real estate developers, investors, and purchasers, and opportunistic lenders in all types of distressed situations and non-distressed real estate in and out of court. My practice is focused on bankruptcy, reorganization, and workouts, and all real estate related issues. As you can see, it's a tremendous panel today with a lot of experience and knowledge in the industry, and clearly a panel that's focused and aware of what's happening in today's marketplace. It's a privilege to hear from them, and there are many issues to discuss on this topic, so we're going to try to focus on a few of them today. We're clearly seeing a situation that was not expected, at least not at this magnitude and at these levels so quickly. Daniel, what kind of distressed debt situations are we seeing in the marketplace today, and why?
Well, first of all, good morning, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I had some audio issues earlier. Hi, good morning, guys. Chris, Faisal, Aaron, Josh, thanks for hosting the panel. As far as what we're seeing today, I think, we're very much early inning. I think that's a consensus in our business. There have been infusions of capital and shoring up by the federal government, which came fast and furious. So that has changed the game a bit for the interim. There's been a general trend in forbearance across the entire country. So banks are working with borrowers, at least for the time being. And so those two items have retarded the actual flow of distressed debt. That said, there is distressed debt immediately after all the messaging came out in the media about what was going on with the pandemic. Late February, March, we saw some rapid trades, which I'm sure Faisal was all over on the Royal Bank of Scotland, the CMBS trades that came and went in literally the flash of an eye. And those were to provide liquidity to some of the lenders out there. And those disappeared quite quickly. But for the time being, we're seeing more and more come in on a weekly basis. I think there's still disparities between bid and ask. I think those are driven by virtue of the fact that there's still a great deal of uncertainty, and uncertainty wins the day. Your conversations on uncertainty, which I've said before, will far outlast any conversations on the bucket of certainty that's out there today. So, but there's plenty in the pipeline and there's more coming.
Faisal, how would you look at that compared to where we might be in 12 to 24 months? And specifically, with that outlook on distress, how do you differentiate between some of the asset classes that are in distress right now?
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And let me just get to your question. I think fundamentally, we just all have to remember real estate is a lagging indicator. So we are effectively in a recession right now, or let's just say the first inning of a recession. It's going to play out, and everybody has a view on how long this thing will last, whether it's 6 months, 12 months. If you think about special servicing and default rates, even on the CMBS side, they were almost at their peak in 2011. And that was 2 years after you can say the US recovery actually started. So the way I'm thinking about it, I think the real opportunities will emerge probably 6 to 12 months from now, which will be the start of, I think, when you see systemic opportunities. I think there's no doubt there's opportunities now. I mean, Chris, Dan, myself are capitalizing on some great opportunities in different capacities. They exist. But if you take a page out of Blackstone's playbook, and I was listening to the earnings call where John Gray said that they've bought $11 billion of liquid securities, so stuff on the screen. That's the sort of the first arc of opportunity. They're moving then to rescue capital. That's when things go from, when a liquidity problem to a solvency problem. And then lastly, they think of this as a real estate issue. And Blackstone doesn't see real estate opportunities for about 12 months. So what do I see in 12 months? I see in 12 months us being in the middle of a classic recession. I see us towards the end of any sort of forbearance that the Federal Reserve has allowed, the federal government has allowed banks to take, the 6 months where we don't hold you accountable for capital ratios, when debt funds and borrowers have passed the point of, hey, we're going to give you a 3-month or a 6-month, when people look at themselves and really ask themselves real tougher questions. Do I want to default? Do I want to foreclose? Do I want to hit bankruptcy? Do I want to sell my note? I think that's when all these issues sort of conflate. So in our opinion, I think it's probably the real opportunities will start, 9, 12 months out.
Touched on some great issues, specifically how some of these things get dealt with, whether it's a forbearance or workout, deferral, maybe even a bankruptcy. And we're going to touch on those a little bit later. So that was very good foreshadowing as to what some of these issues could be and where some of these opportunities could be. Chris, same question, where you see this going 12, 24 months out, and also specifically, can you differentiate between asset classes possibly, as which classes might recover faster, which might take longer time, which might not see the same levels of distress?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we started Ironhound in 2009, and in 2018 and 2019, we still had on face value $4 billion worth of workouts that we closed in those years. So if you just look at how long it took to work through the system, the last go around, that was 10 years, right? So we're in batting practice, I think, of kind of the problems that are going to arise right now. And specifically your question about asset class, I think it's no secret that hospitality and retail at the moment are the most challenged, right? I think the pipes of the system, we focused mostly in the last 3 months on CMBS. Obviously balance sheet lending and those workouts and conversations are a little bit easier and quicker because of the way that CMBS has to work through the system amongst servicers and bondholders and the rest. But I do think that you will see short-term forbearance or quick workouts that then have to be dealt with 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 24 months from now. And, if, as Faisal said before, the default rate in 2011 was high, we're almost back to that now. And, we're 90 days into this. So I think we have a long road ahead of us.
We all come to this a little differently. I see things on the legal side and the business side, but mainly working, whether it's on the investor side or the creditor side or on the sponsor side, how to deal with these things from a legal perspective. We have Faisal and Chris, you deal with it as an advisor mainly, and Dan, you deal with it as a principal, also an advisor, but also as a principal. Do you think there are differing views on how this gets approached? How when you look at things, when you get involved in things from a timing standpoint, and potentially different perspectives as being an advisor versus being a principal. Dan?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, the DNA of our company was built on distress from the last go around, the fiscal crisis that commenced in 2008. And so, it's funny because when you purchase notes that are non-performing, sometimes you actually invariably become a consultant in some hybrid fashion, because if you're engaging in dialogue with someone who's on the other end, a sponsor that has issues and is in trouble, you end up actually being a pseudo consultant. I think that the views are different and the approach is different. I think today we can all agree that whether you're the lender, the borrower, or the tenant, there's been a general sentiment toward cooperation, which I think is materially different from the last go-around. The last go-around, people had, particularly in asset classes like what Chris mentioned, hospitality and retail, they had what to protect, right? And I'm not saying that, there's so many nuances to every deal. There's ways to recreate, reinvent real estate always. However, today, cash flows are not necessarily evident. And so is a borrower going to put good money after bad? How well are they going to reflect on the true situation? And what are they going to do and how are they going to behave? So, the sponsor today has a few different questions fundamentally about how they're going to react if they're in a distressed situation once those forbearances wear off, once the capital reserves wear off. We had discussed this offline with Faisal a few days ago. I am an adamant believer in that, it's always best to have someone like Faisal and Chris. I don't know you yet, but I imagine like Chris to get involved and help you bring perspective. No different than you would on the sales side, right? You bring someone in, the best person to talk up your book is someone else. When a friend says you're great at something, that's much better than you saying it. When you say it, you sound like an asshole. Excuse me. When someone else tells you, it's much more flattering when it comes from a third party. But in the context of distress, where you're suddenly a deer in headlights and the perspectives change, the fundamentals of your deal have changed, I think it's great to have that perspective of a third-party consultant who doesn't have the equity or sweat in the game the way you do and is not married to the project. Not dissimilar to the way a non-family member might give your kid some good advice that your child takes over the very same advice you had given them just a day prior.
Every day.
That's great advice. And
I would just add to that. The only thing, Dan, I echo your point tremendously. I think too that, there are a lot of people that have never done this before, right? There was way more leverage in the system last go around, which was causing a lot of the issues, and it was a bank issue, right? This was a health issue. But, we've done 200 of these things and we compare that, every deal we look at, we kind of compare it to what we did in the past. And I think for some people, this is a figuring out process. They never had a problem before because they never had a hotel shut down or a retail center shut down and no sales receipts. So it's an education process as much as it is an advisory process.
By the way, I think that's also on the credit side too. I think there's a lot of bright folks out there that stepped in and took advantage of the new legislation that came out of the last crisis that went into lending, and we've been in this prolonged bull cycle. And so, even the guys that had experience, and I've spoken to some over the last few months, hundreds of calls, bankruptcy experts, workout experts, they're dusting off their notes, they're dusting off their books. Those are guys that have lived through multiple cycles. But the guys that haven't, that have just been originating, there's a new playbook that has to be learned, and the best way it's learned is in the field.
By the way, I read in the Wall Street Journal that even bankruptcy judges are dusting off what they learned and what they did in the last crisis. So just think about that. I came to the States, I came to America, I think it was 19, and maybe in the first year in college, someone said to me the two most powerful positions in America are border patrol officers and bankruptcy judges. And I didn't understand the gravity of that until, you get on with your life and you understand how consequential each one of those roles can be. So yeah, look, it's funny sometimes you think about workout people dusting things off, but if bankruptcy judges are dusting off what they know and what they need to know, it says something about the market. I'll just say one quick thing on those points. I don't think the difference between a principal and an advisor, the approach is much different. Here's a perspective I just like to add. I just think you need to be a great deal guy at the end of the day. And a great deal guy has great listening skills, great empathy, has incredible situational awareness, much more than writing a typical loan. I think decisions on distressed debt are far more consequential than just writing a regular loan. As an advisor, I'd like to believe you need to be seen to be one step ahead, because you're not going to need to be seen as one step behind. So you got to be one step ahead because you're helping someone navigate through a hall of mirrors effectively. It's really hard to see through, and uncertainty, as Dan said, is sort of the central theme to all of this.
I could add as a bankruptcy lawyer, just to add a few things to that. While there are wrinkles to this, there are parallels in the past that are being looked at, and the bankruptcy judges are applying, obviously, the bankruptcy code, but also previous cases that had some similarities. For example, in Florida, we have hospitality as our main industry. Hospitality is in free fall right now, as we just talked about, and as we know. We also have a very real estate-based economy here. So we always go through all the cycles. Many of the cases are real estate-based. The Chapter 11s become real estate centric, whether it's standalone condo buildings, hotels, developments. And the courts here understand how to run a case. We even have single asset real estate designations, and the courts are prepared to see these cases. What's different is the volume. It's coming very quickly. And even though there have been lots of high profile retail filings, there's a concern that in the next couple of months, once these forbearance agreements or deferrals run, that there might be many more Chapter 11 filings across the country. Specifically, when you talk about retail cases, there was a little bit of this about 2-3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when Amazon started impacting all the chains. And we had several chains. Payless Shoe Store filed twice. I did a Chapter 11 with 100 retail mall-based stores. So there's been a lot of those 11s that are similar to retail 11s that have the same landlord-tenant. The difference is here is that there you had some customers coming into stores. But in this situation, you had malls where there were 0 customers coming into stores. So it's a trickle-up effect. You had no customers coming in, so the tenants couldn't pay the landlord. And the landlords didn't get any rent, so they couldn't pay their debt service. So it seemed to just trickle up and cause this problem. The other interesting thing that's happening in landlord tenant-based retail cases now is sometimes there's issues before the courts as to whether or not debtor tenants can say, we can't pay our post-petition rent, which is a requirement from once you file the case. You have to file and be current with your post-petition rent. But they're getting relief from the court for a few months out saying, we can't pay even if we want to. The code requires us to pay, but we can't because there are no tenants coming in. And courts have entered that relief. So the courts are adapting to the situation and hopefully are entering orders that will smooth this process out and help it shake out as these cases continue. But getting back to the yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Dan.
Josh, I told you we like to disrupt things, so we're gonna have some fun today, right? So I have 2 questions for you on that front. One is, in the context of COVID in the courts, do you think, we've thought through this a lot. How will a foreclosure be received on the state level? Will there be reinterpretations of contract law or not? Our experience is that, one of the beautiful things in America is that contract law is tried and true. Property rights are tried and true. It's one of the beautiful things about collateralized lending where you have an actual pledge of interest. But do you think that, there will be any variance from that? There's obviously going to be empathy because the judge and his clerk or her clerk have been affected by COVID as has everyone. So you have to be mindful of that. The whole environment is different because the whole globe's been affected, right? It's not, hey, this guy screwed up or this gal screwed up and isn't making their payments. It goes well beyond that. Everyone has in some way been impacted. So I guess it's that plus the social aspects. Do you think that it sounds like you just articulated that they very much incorporated the social aspects into a landlord-tenant case?
It's a great question. I'll tell you, in bankruptcy court, a lot of times the judges will hear the issues and will tell the lawyers to go out into the hall and have a talk and see if they could get somewhere on the process. They can maybe take a ruling or an opinion of the judge, read the tea leaves and go outside and talk about it and see if there's something there. Because bankruptcy courts are equity. And there's really a push to try to work things out and be reasonable, of course, while using the code as your guide. So while I think there will be regular rulings and cases going forward, because everybody who's involved in cases, even sophisticated players, whether it's the financial advisors, the lawyers, the creditors committee, all of them know the steps in a case. I think there's a great judge here in South Florida, a very distinguished longtime judge, who I've heard on several times invoke the doctrine of Rahmanis in court. There may not be a specific code section on that, but there is that concept. I know hearings are being continued, people are given time to try to work things out, and conversations are being encouraged between debtors and creditors to try to reach some kind of accommodations. So I think right now, as we're seeing those types of accommodations, I think where it's going to get tougher is 3 months out or the remaining 2 months from now, when those agreements have ended, some customers are coming back in and there is some money coming through, then it becomes a rush for the dollars and where do those dollars go, to which creditors, to which landlords to keep the case alive. And that also will tie into what we're talking about today with the need for new capital. Will it be a bridge loan coming in? Will it be debtor in possession financing? Will it be out of court, some type of increased lending? So those opportunities are also going to exist even within a Chapter 11 case or a foreclosure case. And the one thing when we get to what do we do in this opportunity and what debt situations might be there for people, we'll talk about potentially the benefits of doing something in a court filing or in a bankruptcy, such as a 363 sale. So there's lots of options, but bankruptcy right now, it's begun already as the cases we know about. And there is a feeling that there's going to be significant more Chapter 11 cases, even if they're liquidations, and certainly more out-of-court workouts between all the parties. What I want to go to the next question is rescue capital specifically. We touched on it. Faisal and Chris, what are your thoughts on rescue capital, the availability, what it might be priced at, and how it could work in some of these situations?
So I'll go first. We think there's a huge role for rescue capital in this market. And just theoretically, the way it works is that, you remember 2 months ago when we thought about this as liquidity crisis. Well, liquidity over time has becomes solvency. There's only so much you can live on your credit card. So what's happening is situations where someone has a 60% LTV loan and the world just ended, or let's just say it restarted again. And that 60% LTV loan is an 80% loan. It's a mark-to-market 80% loan. That doesn't change the fact that they need liquidity to feed their asset. So an 80% loan and they need liquidity, which they don't have. So they have equity in their deal, but they don't have liquidity to support the deal. That's where people like Dan or others, peers that exist in the market against BH3 can come in and say, we see equity or we see value, and we can provide liquidity. So that's rescue capital. I mean, the way rescue capital works is junior effectively to all the debt instruments in the capital structure, but it's senior to equity. So it comes in as a preferred equity tranche. It subordinates the current equity in the transaction or the current cash in the transaction. And it comes in at, I think preferred equity right now is coming in mid to high teens. I mean, if guys who are writing mezz at like 10, 11, 12 are thinking about writing mezz at like 12, 13, 14, then preferred equity or rescue capital comes in at or a little bit higher than that. So we're involved in 2 PE deals right now where there's rescue capital coming into a transaction, subordinating the current equity, coming in the mid-ish type teens, and the new capital sees value, sees equity, wants to subordinate it, but wants to provide the liquidity that's required to restore an asset back to good health.
So I think what I would add to that is I think, the rescue capital was a very much talked about, very not often seen, I would say, characteristic of the last downturn. And part of the reason for that was the pendulum swung so far back inside, given how much leverage was on these assets, that very often value sat inside of the debt on a lot of these, on a lot of the loans that we worked on. So you had to get in and do a full-scale restructured workout with the special servicer or balance sheet lender in order to figure out a place where that capital could then come in. I think this go round, there's obviously inherently less leverage. We'll still figure out what things are worth when the world opens back up. But I do think there will be an opportunity, very often in CMBS, I'll talk specifically about that. It's hard to raise money and bring capital into a CMBS deal without getting out of that debt, because you have very often, sub-debt restrictions. You can only transfer up to 49% non-controlling interest. Guys coming in want to see recognition agreements and they want the lender to acknowledge their position. So, very often, I use the example, if you paid $130 million for an asset and borrowed 90, and today it's worth 95, and you need, as Faisal said, you need 10 to 15 million bucks, whatever it may be, but you can only go out and borrow 80, provided you were able to pay that off, right? People will have to go out. The debt is money good, but they will have to go out, negotiate with the lender to get out of the CMBS loan, and then raise that rescue capital at the same time. So I do think it'll be more prevalent in this cycle, or this downturn, I should say. But it's still a tricky, plane to land, if you will.
I think that's very, very correct. And we're gonna look now into 2 other things. A little bit what borrowers can do, investors can do if they're facing a troubled situation potentially. And then towards the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about how investors and people can take not advantage, but can look for opportunities in this current environment. And before we do that, Riverside has a very creative thing where they ask 5 survey questions to the audience. And then the information comes back in and they can evaluate and see where the audience is holding on certain issues and their experience levels as it relates to what we're doing. So we're going to take a very, very short break now. And I think each of you is going to receive on your screen, all the participants are going to receive on your screen 5 survey questions from Riverside.
Can we continue to chat, Josh?
I'm sure. Let's do it. Let's keep talking, I guess. I think the whole thing will take about a minute.
It'll take less than a minute. And
let's
then,
give it a 1 minute break. Let's give it a 1 minute break and then we'll jump right back in.
You can tell Dan's a deal guy. Just wants to get in.
And I didn't even have, by the way, I should charge Duncan for, I keep picking up the cup and thinking, oh, they should have paid Riverside a placement fee.
I was going to say that. As soon as I saw it, I want to know what kind of fee and who's getting it.
I'll tell you what, they are not going out of business because they make some good coffee.
I just want to know where everyone's getting their haircuts. So either there's some mystery barber that's around or you guys enjoy better relationships with your wife than I do.
Mine doesn't look like it requires as much technical skill as yours might. So I've been living in Virginia, so they barbershops opened up here a couple weeks ago, so I was able to get taken care of.
Gotcha.
And I have a 12-year-old that shaves this.
Yeah, Faisal Verone doesn't have the same issue though. He's been fine.
I know he's good.
All right, I'm told we have 30 more seconds to go.
Well, Chris, you're usually in Manhattan?
Yes. So we're Ironhound's based in New York City. I live in New York City, but I've been quarantined in Virginia since March, just in the DC area.
All right, here we go. I think we're going to start up again. So we're going to get to some nuts and bolts of debt opportunities in the distressed world. But before we get to that, the current situation affects not only those seeking opportunities, but also those who are facing issues themselves. I deal with that on a daily basis, whether it's just answering broad questions about what do we do now, rents aren't coming in, there's nobody in the hotels, dealing with the workouts, dealing with institutional lenders, CMBS, as we've talked about, whether it's pre-negotiation agreements, forbearance agreements. There are also certain things that investors and borrowers can do that make sense to help them with the situation. So we should spend a few minutes just talking about what you would say to someone in a situation where they have some concern about their own property and their own loan, their own investment, to give some thoughts as to what they might want to do in this distress situation. So Dan, why don't you take that?
Okay. Look, if someone's experiencing a distressed situation, things aren't going according to plan. I always say, like, your dreams, your goals, on whether they're your personal broader goals or on a specific asset. In my mind, the goal is to hit. If you hit 85% or 90% of that, you've done really, really well, because things don't go according to plan, and so you have to shoot far and then hit close to that marker, and that's usually, in my mind, that's definition of success, because spreadsheets are often not 100% spot on, and deals don't always go. You have to be nimble. If you're a real estate investor, developer, redevelopment, what have you, you have to be nimble. You have to be like a chameleon. Things change on a regular basis, and you cannot be tone deaf. And we're in an environment where, it depends who I speak to. I hear some tone deaf comments into the marketplace and into people's own subjective deals. Is one of the comments we made earlier. It's important to get other people's advice. And the catch-22 in this business is, if you're going out there and being bold and taking risks, guess what? There's a downside. We all know that. So you underwrote the downside, you shoot for the upside, but at the end of the day, that comes with some level of hubris, some level of self-confidence, and someone has to back away from that and check themselves and talk to your peers. Your greatest asset is your relationships. And there are a lot of good people in our business. So pick up the phone and talk to people like Faisal, like Chris, talk to others. And I'm not talking up their book. We're on the panel together, and it's a natural order of things. you need to get perspective and put your ego aside, check it at the door, and get perspective from smart people that can provide insights and give you maybe a different way to look at it. And sometimes that is your best pathway.
Fossil. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Fossil,
No,
one of the issues we deal with when I'm facing a situation, lenders are putting documents in front of borrowers, in front of investors, whether it's a pre-negotiation agreement or a forbearance agreement. And there's concerns with those because at times a borrower could be giving up rights or waiving rights that might hurt them in the future, just for the sake of a conversation. Or in a forbearance agreement that might seem great for now, but might come back and hurt 90 days from now. And those are things borrowers really have to think about and be careful. When you're facing a restructuring, so you've been doing quite a few of those recently of large numbers. When you're facing something like that, can you walk us through a reorganization? I know we haven't completed many of them, but can you walk us through what someone who needs a reorganization, even outside of court, where you might take them and what they might need?
When you say reorganization, you mean in regards to a bankruptcy, or you want to go through the
No, restructuring. Put bankruptcy on the side. When you get involved in a case without bankruptcy and you do a restructuring in this environment, how are you helping clients?
Your clients come to you at different points of the curve. I think there's times a client will come to you and just say, look, I need, someone's got a pre-negotiation letter in front of me. We want to talk to our servicer. We want to talk to our lender. And that's one end of the curve. I think the other end of the curve is when someone says, listen, I'm stuck. We're at a point where we might throw something into bankruptcy. We want to understand our options. And I'll just share an example that Josh and I are on a deal, or we were circling on a conversation. We effectively talked the client out of bankruptcy, effectively, because in today's, you got to walk people through the implications of all their decisions. And in bankruptcy court, you got to come up with liquidity. You got to carry the project. You got to be able to sort of have a reorganization plan. You just don't throw things into bankruptcy. You got to be ready for what's to come. And if we're talking about this being a liquidity issue, do you have a couple of $1 million lying around to pay advisors, and do you have to support the project and to support a plan? And in some cases they don't have it. And do you have a plan that the judge isn't going to throw out of court in 30 seconds? So that's an example of someone comes to you before bankruptcy and say, hey, I want to throw into bankruptcy, because it's not so simple. And then when it comes to forbearance agreements, I mean, it's not all, or pre-negotiation letters, not all one size fits all. We were handling a deal where, as part of the forbearance agreement or the pre-negotiation, the conversation was the borrower had to get away with their standstill agreement. You can't fight a foreclosure. That's tough. So you're playing sudden death with a brick wall in order to get a 3-month forbearance. Is that a bet you want to make? The question is how badly you need a forbearance that you're willing to sort of take your only sort of ace in the hole outside of bankruptcy out of the conversation. So I think every situation is different, and that's the complexity of this business. I mean, there's a different paradigm to address different points of the borrower's distress conversation, whether it's in the early stage or the later stage.
Now, the other piece of that, Josh, is that engage counsel early. Again, it goes back to the same thing. Like, go speak to a lawyer, speak to whomever is your go-to confidant on the legal side before you put anything in writing, including emails. We have a joke in our office that prefs kill, right? You can do great on a deal, but if that pref is burning at too high a rate, you can't get out of your own way no matter how great you are in execution. And emails kill also. And I can't tell you how many times in the last go around I saw emails that were just really, they're just not thoughtful, and it's easy. And I know it's impulsive. You shoot out an email, stay away from that. Be mindful, be thoughtful about correspondence you're sharing with lenders, and seek counsel early in the process.
Chris,
the only thing I would add to that, Dan, that I think just didn't get said just yet is I do think getting legal counsel involved and talking about bankruptcy, and that stuff's fine. But to me, it really is a matter of last resort, right? I mean, you got to be communicating with the lender, telling them what's going on, out in front of those issues. The lender has no idea how to run the property. Not that they can't figure it out, but they're not in it day to day. And so if you call them 120 days into a problem, it's different than if you called them at the beginning of that problem. I'm not asking people to predict what's going to happen. I'm just saying if there are problems on the ground and you let them know about it early, they may tell you to pound sand, but at least you're reaching out, proactively to say, look, we're trying to manage these issues. And again, balance sheet versus CMBS are two totally different animals. And everybody knows it's harder when you have servicers as opposed to an asset or your relationship manager. But, communication with your guy, with lenders and to the pre-negotiation agreements, the documents are the documents. They should reinstate what the documents say. And, they shouldn't increase liabilities to the borrower just to have a conversation. I mean, that's as simple as it is. Very often you don't have room to negotiate, but we've never had a pre-negotiation letter come up down the road and someone say, oh, we signed this here and now we have this big issue. Like, you sign it, you get in a room and you figure it out. And it sometimes takes 2 years.
Chris, those are great points, and you're absolutely right. As Faisal mentioned, we had a potential Chapter 11 candidate, might still be one, but the work that was done and the advice that was given was how to keep it out. And even though that's a workout process, maybe there's a better outcome of not filing, which we believe in this case might be the situation. So getting involved early is very important.
In the past 10 years, I can't think of one case that really that was our advice, right?
That's right. And your point is very good. Communication is extremely important. And I always felt that communication from the lawyer is too late, meaning there should be communication early between the sponsor, the borrower, the lenders, discuss things with them, tell them the problem, especially when they know the problem already. Especially in this environment, there's nothing to hide. Everybody knows what the issues are. So avoiding your lender is a bad situation. Avoiding the issues isn't going to work. Be proactive, talk to them, explain things, answer their questions. And even when I'm involved early, many times I'm behind the scenes. Many times I'm advising clients to communicate, talk, work things through. I may be part of that process, but I think the one-on-one communication goes a long way. Chris, if you could talk a little bit more about CMBS specifically. We know that's difficult to deal with the times you have a servicer. It's not your local banker who made the deal for you and you have a relationship with and you've gone fishing with or hung out with, things like that. It goes to special servicing. It's a brand new person. It's a brand new department. There's no relationship there. So it's impactful on the individual because it hurts because the relationship is no longer there and everything was going so well till now and it's a new person. If you could walk us through a little bit from the CMBS standpoint, what that entails and how that could be an opportunity.
Well, I think that's where, folks like Faisal and myself, become very important in the process, right? Because, a lot of these people are the same folks that for the last, 5 years or 4 years for Faisal and 11 for us, we've been dealing with on a regular basis. So, I'm not suggesting that the relationships will get you, anything, that you wouldn't otherwise get by proposing a good deal, but it'll get attention. They'll pick up the phone. We'll have conversations, but as I said before, the pipes of the system weren't designed to get thousands of loans to the special servicers at one time. And the effects that has on the bondholders and who's in control in post-recession CMBS 2.0 and 3.0 is much different than it was in legacy CMBS. And knowing that, right, when a control of the bonds, who is the ultimate decision maker, can shift just by virtue of appraisals coming in, that's something that you could work as hard as you want for the next 90 days. And then at the end of that 90 days, if the appraisals all hit and control shifts, now there's a new person in the driver's seat deciding what they feel is best for the assets and the trust and everything else. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a constantly never ending process, but it can take a little while. You have to obviously show cause to go from the master servicer to the special servicer. And very often just calling legacy CMBS, you could call up at the beginning of the last downturn, say, please transfer my loan. Now it's much different, right? The controlling class guys will push back on transfers until they absolutely have to come over. And again, that's where Faisal and myself can really help educate folks, because it's not as easy as just picking up the phone. You're right.
But it's even more than that, because once you're outside of the conventional lender whole loan, where there's a balance sheet, you can actually speak to a warm body. It's quite different than when you're dealing with a CCR situation, controlling class member, and it's in a bond pool. There's very little to lean on. There's a very insular space to be. And for sure, you need someone to navigate it, because you're looking at a defined process that they run that's not completely transparent. although it articulates itself to be. And you signed up for that. Someone signed up for that CMBS deal because of terms. Something was more attractive on the fiscal side, but on the relationship side, you might have a relationship, but the ability for them to have impact within the bondholders is a very tricky thing and much more difficult in our experience than dealing with a whole loan provider that has a balance sheet loan, or a bridge lender, or tourist lender, as we refer to them sometimes, that has this book of business and has a lot more pliability to engage with a borrower that's in distress.
We have about 10 minutes left. We want to leave some time for questions, but we should switch gears for a moment and talk about opportunities. We've all heard about the RTC days, and then we had the 2007, 2008 situation, and now we've got this situation. We always hear that there's so much capital out there, and so many, what's the technical term? The non-dry powder. We always hear that concept. Everybody's sitting on the sides with the dry powder. The concept is there's tons of money out there. All the funds that have already existed are ready to go. There's new funds starting every day, and individuals looking to buy notes, to buy opportunities. Let's talk about if this is the right time to do that, and how people compete with one another to get those opportunities, and how they should consider seeking out those opportunities.
You want me to kick that off?
To the field, because I'm sure we all have ideas on that.
Yeah. Look, there's a tremendous amount of money, but it's kind of like a restaurant row, right? You're sometimes better off, if you're a restaurateur, to have some neighbors that are in a similar business serving a different fare, because it draws a crowd. And so there's plenty of money out there. There's money that's pivoting from conventional fee deals to distress, because that's the appetite today, and there's a recognition that it will come. And as Faisal alluded to earlier, that's probably 9, 12 months and beyond. But there will be plenty. There's in our minds a pressure cooker of distress, and it's just making its way slowly through the system. And once some of the artificial infusions wear off, there'll be plenty out there. I think depending on who it is, if you're swinging for the fences and you're going after the larger loans or larger deals, that's one appetite, and that's where you'll play with fellow institutional investors, and that's one competitive set. And then if you go, by example, let's say 25 million and under in the distressed space, it's a whole nother marketplace, because the institutions don't necessarily and don't generally want to put their sweat equity into those deals. They don't want their human capital on deals that don't have more zeros before the decimal place. So I think there'll be plenty to do, and you just have to look for the silver linings. They're out there. I know that's easier said than done, but they are out there, and I think patience is important. Reflecting back to the last crisis, I know people that entered very early, for instance, that bought an enormous amount of mortgage-backed securities, residential mortgage-backed securities, massive discounts, massive pools. And then what happened? The legislation shifted, robo-signing came to bear, and that was discovered, and that paper turned into a mess, and a lot of folks lost money. So you don't want to have analysis paralysis, because if you wait too long, you'll be lamenting in 10 years how you didn't take advantage of the opportunity. And by the way, you said take advantage of it. It's not a curse word. Markets ebb and flow. We've had this extraordinary bull run. I think that there has to be money on the other side. Bankruptcy is one of the reasons this country is also great. It allows for recreation of the capital stack. It allows people and corporations to reinvent themselves. I think that's a great thing. And there needs to be someone on the receiving end. So it's a matter of balancing out capital markets and allowing for restoration of normalcy and maybe a regeneration of a asset that's been hobbled into something extraordinary. It does happen. We don't wish it on anyone. I'm on the fee side. I'm on the debt side. I'm empathetic to a distressed situation. We can all be in them. It's possible. At the end of the day, it's all human beings. I think it's one of the things we don't focus on a lot. We're all, at the end of the day, dealing with human beings. You could talk about all the documents. You could talk about various motivations, but it's human capital. That's the most important thing in this business. So I go back to relationships. You want to find deals, focus on building great, sincere, genuine relationships. That's where real opportunities will emerge.
I'd like to take the unpopular view and say that I don't know if there's as much distressed debt capital around as people suggest there is. You know, I probably received 100 phone calls. I don't know, Chris, you probably received just as much since this whole crisis started about everybody wants to buy distressed debt. But, you know, you really go out there and talk to someone and say, I have a distressed debt piece, you want to buy it? Oh, I can't do hotels. Okay. Oh, I can't do something where they're taking over the asset. Okay. I can't do construction. Okay. Well, that's what's distressed right now. I can't do retail. You know, so if you think about it, there's no doubt that there's more committed, non-refundable equity available for real estate debt than there has ever been in history, even at the top of 2007. But I'm just not sure how much is available for distressed debt. I mean, if you think about what's distressed out there, how much of it, how many guys are there that can actually take advantage of distressed debt where it's allowed in their charter or in their biases to go out and take control of a project, wrestle it away from the sponsor, go to court? I think we're conflating a couple of worlds when we say there's a ton of capital available. I think there's a lot of capital available for someone that used to lend at L plus 350 that now is lending at L plus 550. Yeah, I don't know if that's distressed debt though. So I just think sometimes, you know, when I read stuff in the papers and all that, sometimes we talk to each other, we sacrifice a lot of nuance. So I just think there's not as many people as the world would let you want to believe that are focusing on distressed debt. I mean, just take a look at the people on this panel. I mean, Chris, you know, you guys and us, we compete on deals. There's not many guys that compete on some of these deals. I mean, Josh, we just happened to come up with an example where we talked somebody out of bankruptcy. By the way, credit to you for being a bankruptcy lawyer and talking someone out of bankruptcy. So something. And Dan, look, we're somewhat circling a deal together. I mean, it's just incidental. We all showed up on a panel. So, you know, I just don't think it's as big as people say it is in terms of the amount of people that are actioning on distressed debt or can.
No, and so I'll revise my comment because it is a very broad comment, and what you're saying is accurate, because I think where there's deep buckets of capital, it doesn't always have the appetite or the stomach for what we're talking about. So I think it's a really, really great point, Faisal, that there's money out there. There is a lot out there, but it's not necessarily with an appetite toward the complex litigation and complex workouts and the enormous amount of time involved in getting these deals righted and working through hairy situations. And I also think there's a nimbleness required. You know, some of our best deals were closed in a very short period of time. A lot of the institutions don't. There are some that are extraordinary and they can jump on it, but a lot of them have to go through a committee process, and that can retard the process and also create opportunity for private guys that are out there slugging it out and hunting.
I'll give you some practical examples. Right now, our bankruptcy group at our firm is very busy in having these conversations with borrowers. We're also having these conversations with non-institutional lenders that are facing these situations and what steps they should take as well. We're also addressing note purchasers that want to consider taking advantage of an opportunity, what they should do when they foreclose, what they should consider, or what happened if the borrower threatened Chapter 11 or something like that. And by the same token, the separate real estate group of our office, believe it or not, transactions are continuing. There was a lull, and they were mainly legacy deals that were past due diligence, and there were some refinancings. But now, in the last, I'd say 10 days, there are new contracts, new purchase and sale deals that our real estate group is handling with deals in Florida. And I think that's happening across the industry. So we're going to probably have a little bit of both. We're going to have deals that are being done going forward, new deals, new real estate transactions, but we're also going to have significant workouts, significant situations, significant CMBS opportunities or to deal with, and also rescue capital situations as these things continue to develop. So I think it's a pretty broad-based analysis here, a lot of different pieces to touch on, which we try to do. At this point, we have 5 minutes left. I think Riverside wants to open this up to question and answers. So if anybody has some particular questions that have sent them in, please continue to send them in. We'll answer them as best we can. And then towards the end, Riverside is going to publish the outcome of the poll of the survey questions so people can get a better feel for what some of the responses of the group were, because I think it's a pretty large group on this call. So,
Josh,
yeah.
Can we just add to that? I mean, yeah, there are people doing fee deals and, you know, talking about silver linings again. the fact of the matter is capital is extremely cheap right now. So to the extent you can get a lender engaged, lenders still want to put money to work. Developers, investors want to continue to do their work because that's what they do. And so, yeah, everyone wants to get back to normalcy. And that's what makes horse racing. Some guys will buy at a 10% discount to market. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but there are different horses in the race. And so, yeah, there are people coming off the sidelines now and taking advantage of minor corrections on the fee side.
It's a great point. The lenders want to lend, and the developers want to do deals, and the investors want to invest. So
yeah,
just a different perspective at this time, maybe for different numbers, but it's still there. One question that came, a specific question, Dan came to you. It's interesting.
Faisal, I like to call my lifeline.
No.
Call on Faisal.
I think you'll like this one. I could add a lot to it, but I'll probably let this one go. But this is an interesting one. I could add a lot because a lot of times I'm undoing what I'm about to ask you about. So the question is for Daniel. Can you give us some examples of what you meant by problematic emails to lenders?
By the way, problematic email could be to your wife or your girlfriends. It doesn't have to be to your lender. Problematic is, look, first of all, I'm just a big believer in deep thought and thoughtfulness in whatever it is you do. And emails, generally speaking, in my experience, do not convey sentiment at all. And so they can easily be misconstrued. Even if you sent the best worded email to a friend, a colleague, a peer, a lawyer, people are in rapid fire. We have so much information coming at us. I just think that they can be easily misconstrued. And if you're in exchange with a lender, by the way, if any of my borrowers out there, you're not allowed to use this against me. You need to be careful about what you send and how you engage, because it ends up coming into the fold of discovery. So specific example is just be thoughtful, send a lot less emails, and pick up the phone and talk to your lawyer first.
Yeah, just 10 seconds. We had a sponsor that threatened pretty much close, somewhere indirectly or directly, depending who you ask, on about bankruptcy. Within 24 hours, the deal was out of the banker's hand. It was in the special department. We lost all leverage for conversation. A deal that we were working on for about a month that could have gone somewhere basically went out the window. And then I was talking to robots. I'm talking to robots now. That's an example. I have another deal that we were talking to a sponsor, and we're talking to a lender. Sponsor sent an angry text because you're not getting what you want. Back to Dan's point, you're never going to get what you want. News flash to anybody that bought a great asset at a good time. You didn't get everything you wanted then either. We get a lot of what we want, and that's what makes a deal. But it takes two sides to make a market. So things were going a little rough. They sent a tough email, a text message to the lender. We lost the goodwill that's required sometimes to come together just goes away. And sometimes emails don't communicate the emotion. And getting on the phone is an art to the deal as well. So I just wanted to echo the point, but we've sort of lost here a little bit. But people took liberties.
But it's an important one because it's beyond the email. It's also about people constantly jumping. Don't focus so much on what you need and want. And I tell our sales guys this: focus on and give some thought to who's on the other end of the phone, and how do they benefit? We're all human beings, right? How can they benefit from what it is you're talking to them about? Don't be obstinate and think it's all about you, because it's not. And that just, I think, takes a few grains of humility to say, wait a minute, there's someone here. What do they do? Are they working for a lender? Is it their own firm? And maybe how can I make them shine in a tough situation? Because guess what? They didn't want your defaulted loan if that's your situation. So just be mindful. Again, just human being on the other end of the phone that you can likely work through with a little finesse. And again, as Faisal said, not necessarily get everything you want, but get to a place of conversation.
We'll take one more question, then we'll have the poll results because we're running out of time. We could do this for hours. There's so much to talk about, and it's such an interesting topic on all different sides of it. The last question we'll take is someone who is new to the distress industry, but has been involved in hospitality for years and wants to know how they might go about using their skills, such as completing construction, managing the actual asset of the hospitality in the hospitality industry. How could they go about it when somebody else might be having a situation, and how to capitalize it? And I think that's consistent with what we spoke about earlier, is how to capitalize on this market. Sometimes it's with having the funds to step in, sometimes with ability, but really a lot of the time comes from relationships, because how are you going to have the opportunity if you don't find out from a different way? So what are your thoughts on somebody not necessarily breaking into the industry, but finding an opportunity where they could give their skills, whether it's financial skills, advisory skills, or construction and management?
I mean, I'll just, I mean, starting on my side of the table, I think it's obviously it's a relationship business, right? So, you know, starting at the asset level and kind of tracking what's having trouble, what's not having trouble. I mean, there's a little bit of, you know, sweat you got to put into identifying assets that you may be able to have an introduction made on. And I think for those types of guys too, also staying close to lenders and special servicers, right? If they end up having to take over control of the property, because Faisal and I weren't able to get a deal done, you know, they may need guys like that to complete the deals.
Good point. Riverside, if you want to show the survey results, and then we'll wrap up after that.
Sure. So we're just going to launch the poll again, just to give another 30 seconds for people. Actually, no, here we go. You know, we're just going to share the results. Everyone can see it. Oh, I don't have Okay, so I hope you got that useful information.
All right, thank you. I'll just want to wrap up by saying, obviously, we appreciate the opportunity to speak. If anybody, the panelists, wants to have a last word, that's great. But I'll just say on behalf of all of us that we appreciate the opportunity to talk about this topic. There's a lot of things to discuss, a lot of nuance. Speaking for me and all of us, I think you could contact us if you want to have further conversations. We're available, and we're happy to address these issues, especially as they continue in the future. Anybody else have anything to say as a final word? Certainly welcome. If not, we can sign off. Please feel free.
Josh, thanks for moderating too. I think for Faisal and myself, I always add, you know, the best doctors in the world don't operate on themselves, so get somebody involved to help out.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Guys, good to spend an hour with you. And Chris, I look forward to meeting you in person. Faisal, I'm sure we'll be talking very soon and frequently. And wish everyone luck out there. Appreciate everyone's time. I think there have been a lot of these. And so, you know, hopefully someone got a morsel of data or knowledge or wisdom from the group. And if that happened, then I think we all succeeded. So thanks, Josh.
It was a great group. Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. It was informative. It was good. And I'll throw this back out to Riverside to close.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josh, and to all our panelists for a really informative discussion. Just a quick shout out to our sponsors, Riverside Abstract, 1031 Tax, and to our main event sponsor, the Asset Protection Program. Everyone's soon going to get an email from us with information on how to get in touch. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in person.
Thanks, guys.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.